What lies in front of you is a 2020 Lincoln Navigator with 45,000 miles. Now, the Lincoln Navigator was originally introduced in 1998 as the luxury counterpart to the Ford Expedition. This Lincoln Navigator is the 4th generation Navigator, as there's been 4 generations since its inception. This one being introduced in 2018. Now, the Lincoln Navigator's main rival is the Cadillac Escalade, which has been its main rival since its inception back in the late 90s. This Navigator in specific is equipped with a 3.5 turbo V6 engine that produces 450 horsepower. Now, this Navigator is a high-tech pinnacle of the full-size American luxury SUV segment. In this video, I'll be taking around the Navigator, showing off all of its opulent features and concluding the video with my takeaway point. Stay tuned. So, starting with the exterior features of the 2020 Lincoln Navigator, the most noticeable and my personal favorite exterior feature is the grille. This grille is ginormous. You could probably fit a small television in this grille. You have a Lincoln badge the size of a hot dog at a baseball game. In my personal opinion, the kind of chain pattern on the grille reminds me of the GMC Yukon Denali, as it has a kind of similar design to it. But overall, you have these fancy hood lines and these nice L-shaped LED headlights. There's a massive, in-your-face, opulent grille to showcase that this is the pinnacle of Lincoln, the Navigator. So the most noticeable feature about the Lincoln Navigator is how long the vehicle is. The Lincoln Navigator, the short wheelbase, is 210 inches long, which means that it is 17.5 feet long. This is a huge vehicle. I mean, look at the door. The door is the size of like an actual door in a house. You open it, and there's just a palatial cabin to sit in when you open the door. Just how big the vehicle actually is. And one other thing about the Lincoln Navigator is when you're sitting in the actual cabin of the vehicle, you feel so high up. The reason why this vehicle feels so high, you have these huge 22-inch tires, giant wheels below to support this massive vehicle, and one other cool little exterior styling features, you have this suave Navigator badge in chrome on both the passenger and driver's side of the vehicle. So to finalize the exterior styling of the Lincoln Navigator, we must go to the rear trunk. Now, personally, not my favorite rear styling. I mean, I think the Navigator is honestly a beautiful SUV. The grille is nice, the side profile is nice, it's a big, tall, wide, in-your-face luxury cruiser. And then you get to the back and it's not bad, but just a bit underwhelming. I mean, the Lincoln in kind of a space, fancy font looks nice in chrome, it's nice, but with the light bar, it's okay, but just I feel like it's on a slightly better design for the styling of the rear of the Navigator, but like I said, not a game changer, but just a bit underwhelming for the design of the Navigator. So assessing the storage space in the Lincoln Navigator, it is easy to say it is abundant. That would be a bit of an understatement in all honesty. As you can see, we are a time zone apart from the driver's seats, and this is with the third row of seats folded down. There is a ton of room back here. If you have a piece of furniture you need to haul, if you're going on a vacation, you have plenty of storage. Even if you have a large family, you have an abundance of space. And still, if you want to fold the second row of seats down, you can see these buttons right here. The 3s are for the third row of seats, the 2s are for the second row of seats, and L stands for the left side and R stands for the right side. So to drop the second row of seats, hit the second L button, and for the second on the passenger side, hit the button, and the seats were shut. And just one more time, as you can see, with both the second and the third row seats folded down, there is just a ton of space back here. You could probably fit like 8-9 suitcases in here with extra room to spare. So one luxurious amenity about the Navigator is when you go to enter the vehicle, when you pull open the door handle, the running boards will open automatically as so. Open the door and the running boards open below. And now we move to the nucleus of the Navigator, the engine. The 3.5 liter turbo V6 engine made by Ford itself. One cool little fun fact, if you did not know, this Lincoln Navigator shares the same engine and powertrain with the current Ford Raptor. So a cool little feature. And this 3.5 V6 produces 450 horsepower. So a pretty healthy number in terms of power. So moving to the instrument cluster of the 2020 Lincoln Navigator, I just want to say you have a very clear, high-tech digital screen in front of you. On the left side, you have your tachometer. The middle, you have something you can change, which I will get to momentarily. And on the right, you have your digital speedometer and your fuel gauge and range below. So to change the display in the center of the gauge cluster, as you can see, if you move back to the steering wheel, you have this little scroll knob right here with an OK button in the middle. If you scroll up or down, you will see the screen changing in the center. I will zoom in for better focus. So you have the default blank screen. If you go one down, you have your trip 1, you have your trip 2 if you go one more down. Then you have your fuel economy, about 20 mpg averaging in this behemoth of a vehicle. You have your tire pressure for each tire, each PSI on your tires. And then you have your trailer info in case you have a trailer hooked up to your Navigator and you're towing it to some destination. Then you go back to the blank screen. Overall, they have a very high-tech, flushed design to the gauge cluster of your Navigator. So one abnormality in the Navigator is the placement of the engine start-stop button. So as you can see here, you have your steering wheel right in front of you, very nice, leather wrapped, very comfortable, smooth steering wheel. But, you know, as you can see, the engine start-stop button is kind of on top of the dash. You'd think it'd be like right here for some reason, but Lincoln decided to raise it just a tad bit to the top of the dash. And one other odd interior feature in the driver's seat, as you can see, the door handle to get out of the Navigator is kind of buried in this little pocket right here. I believe the current F-150s of the past couple generations have had the same thing as well, but the door handle is buried almost, so you pull it out, open the door, and you can get out of your Navigator. And as again, the running boards will extend automatically when you open the door. So next we're going to move to the center stack of the Lincoln Navigator. So as you can see here, you have your kind of iPad-esque design to the screen. I will come back to the screen momentarily though. So moving below the screen, you have your AC controls. You have a camera button right here for your rear camera settings, very nice high-tech. Go back out of this. Then you have your hazards. And one odd feature in the Navigator as well is the gear selector. As you can see, you don't have a big column shifter anymore or one on the center console. You have these kind of little tabs, kind of weird. You have park versus neutral drive, just weird little buttons you press when you're gonna change gears in your Navigator. Kind of a weird touch, but nonetheless, that's how Lincoln does it. I like how the center console itself kind of comes to a raised angle right here, so it's kind of facing the driver and the passenger, not just flat on the thing. Basic stuff right here, you have your volume for your radio controls right here, all the basic stuff. Your tuning button, volume, simple stuff. Below all the radio settings, you have your AC controls. You'll have these little kind of dials to change the temperature for both the driver and the passenger. They can set it to whatever they please. You have 3 levels of heated seats, 3 levels of cool seats, and then you have your front and rear defrosters, your basic AC settings, and then the air circulation button. Right here in the middle, you have your fan speed settings and the menu for the AC. If you press the menu button, you will have a digital readout to do it in case you don't want to use the buttons, and a rear button if you want to change it for the rear passengers. Moving below the AC, you have this nice wooden feel. One thing I will say, as an owner of a 2004 Ford with the wooden interior, this is a much nicer upgrade. The interior of my Ford F-150 with the wood feels kind of cheap. This feels much nicer, like an actual wood quality. So as you can see here, you have 2 little storage cubbies, one right here for a pretty deep storage with 2 little USB outlets. Shut this. The right storage has 2 little cup holders and a little divot in case you want to store some small item like a little hand sanitizer right there. As you can see, moving below the 2 storage cubbies, you have your parking brake, your automatic parking sensors, your auto start stop button, your parking assist button, and your brake hold button right here. You have your various drive mode settings right here, which you can toggle through, which I will come back to. And lastly, in the center console, you have your main console cubby as well as your armrest for the driver and the passenger. One thing that's kind of weird about this is it looks like there were to be an individual way you can raise the armrest for the driver and the passenger, but as you see, it's actually one giant cubby. You have a really deep storage outlet right here. It's not very wide, but it's just really deep. You have a 12-watt outlet in here. It's a nice deep console to store some items if you wish in your Navigator. And in case you need more storage, you have a plentiful amount below. You have 2 ginormous storage cubbies below the actual center console in the Navigator. So in case you need more storage, you have plenty to choose from. So next in the Navigator, we will go over the drive modes. If you want to do this, you toggle to your drive mode, little toggle as I pointed to in the center console. So you have your normal mode, your conserve mode with the little graphic of the earth. And you go one more over, you have your excite, which is basically your sport mode. And there are a couple others as well. If you scroll further to the right, back behind the normal, you have your normal 4x4 auto, good for better traction. You have slippery for snow, icy, and rain conditions. And you have deep conditions in case you're going off-roading in your Navigator. So in case you want to go in any certain terrain, Lincoln has you covered with an abundance of drive modes in the Navigator. So moving to the center screen of the Lincoln Navigator, to be brutally honest, the technology could be a bit better in the Navigator. I mean, granted, you do get some very good features, as I will get to in a moment, but as you can see, as you scroll through, it's not super instantaneous. It's got a little bit of a lag, and, you know, say you click on one thing, it kind of takes a couple of seconds to get into it. It doesn't recognize your touch super quickly either. And when you're paying near $100,000 for a brand new Navigator, you get better tech in some Honda Civics, honestly, but like in terms of speed, which is a bit of a disappointment when you're paying this much money for, you know, full-size luxury SUV. Anyway, though, the Navigator does have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, 2 huge features which most consumers rely on these days. You have Lincoln Way, which is kind of Lincoln's kind of technology. You have a Wi-Fi spot, which is pretty nice in case you want to gain better internet connection if you're in the middle of nowhere. But overall, you know, you have your basic features, you know, your audio right here. You have climate control, you know, phone, in case you want to, you know, use your iPhone. Navigation's a bit okay. You know, it's got clear display, clear directions, but it's not up to the same par as Audi or BMW or some other car brands have in terms of technology for navigation. Going back to the home, you can see you have more apps and settings, which is where your main things are. You know, you can do some cool things with your ambient lighting. You can change the colors of it. You have a bunch of colors you can pick from. Currently set to purple. You have automatic park settings, and you can see you have very good camera settings as well. You can see different panoramas of the camera, different angles, but and the overhead display as well. But overall, though, I mean, solid tech in the Navigator. You know, not bad by any means. You know, this has very good tech that some people would really enjoy, but it could be a bit better for $100,000 in a vehicle. So going back to the length of the Navigator, as you can see, as the driver of the vehicle turns around, it feels like the rear seat passengers are a different time zone away. This car is extremely long. You have 2 very spacious rear rows with the second row and the third row, and, you know, even a little more extra storage behind the third row. So a very large vehicle when piloting the Navigator. So one high point of the Lincoln Navigator is the interior seating. This vehicle is incredibly comfortable. Looking at this seat, it almost looks like a first-class seat on an international flight. You have an extremely plush padded headrest to rest your head while driving. And just look at all of the support you have for your back, for your legs. You have your support for your thighs and your lower legs down here. Just an insane amount of very comfortable, padded, plush leather interior. The interior comfort of the Navigator is incredible. You feel like you're sitting in a recliner. If you just want to coast down the highway, the Navigator will be an amazing vehicle for just sheer comfort and just high quality material while going down the highway. So moving to the rear seats of the 2020 Lincoln Navigator, I will just say the rear seat room is incredible. I'm fully outstretched. I'm about 5'10", sitting straight up, legs very far stretched. I just have a ton of room. It's like I'm sitting in my couch in my living room. And as if there weren't enough features in the front two seats, there is a bunch more in the rear seats of the Navigator too. So the rear seats have their own nice little panel. These two buttons are pretty cool. As you can see, you have a huge panoramic sunroof in the Navigator. If you press these buttons, you can watch it whir open or pull it backwards. And to pause it, just press the button again. Fan speed, basic stuff. Heated seats, power for the rear passengers, temperature, all your basic stuff. You have two USBs right here. You have a 12 volt, and you have your standard household plug outlet. And hit this little button, cup holders, surprise, surprise, for your rear passengers. So continuing with the rear seat amenities, you have two very large cup holders in the Navigator. You have a little movie screen right here. Turn it on, hit this little button, and you can see a little screen which you have your music, your volume, and you can see here below this you have your same kind of pattern with a dual armrest in the wood as the front. Another really deep center console for the rear passengers in case they want to store some things. And there is even more storage below in this large wide cubby. Very similar layout to the rear seat as there is in the front seat of the Navigator, so very consistent styling, traditional, but really high-tech materials for the rear seat passengers in case you're hauling a large crew in your Navigator. So moving to the far rear row in the Navigator, to the third row, as you can see, I'm sitting fully outstretched again with this seat pushed all the way back, and there's still a decent amount of room. It's not spacious like it is in the front two rows, but this is with the seat fully stretched back to the farthest distance, and there's still some room, just to show you how spacious the Navigator really is. And you know, just as before, really plush leather seats, not as comfortable as the front two seats are for the driver and the passenger, but still very high quality leather interior for the third row seats of the Navigator. All right, so getting behind the wheel of the 2020 Lincoln Navigator, obviously the most noticeable thing is just how gigantic this vehicle is. I've driven a lot of big vehicles. I've driven a Ram 2500, I daily a Ford F-150, I've driven a new GMC Sierra, and this honestly is right up there with the size of the Ram 2500. This is a gigantic SUV. You're really high up. There's three really long rows of seats behind you. You feel like you're driving a miniature limousine. This is a huge vehicle. Other things that I will say about the Navigator, it feels so luxurious and nice. Like when you're behind the wheel of this thing, you feel like the king of the road. You're in this big, burly, like $100,000 SUV made by Lincoln, all this flashy wood, this high tech, or this high quality leather materials, some pretty decent tech, and 450 horsepower beneath your body. So you just feel like royalty behind the wheel of this thing. I will say this is incredibly smooth. The steering is like cutting melted butter, super smooth. You can wrangle the Navigator around corners very well. It's got solid pickup. It's not insane. It kind of has a bit of a lag. I mean, like I said, I daily a Ford F-150. I honestly don't love the way Fords drive. They have a little bit of lag in their trannies, but you got the 10-speed auto. But as big as this vehicle is, it's got decent handling. I just took a pretty sharp turn on like a high incline, and it just feels smooth. Like driving this vehicle, it just, you know, I bashed the tech a little bit, you know, it's a little bit outdated, but the main thing about the Navigator when you're behind the wheel of this thing, it floats. You feel like you're on a cloud. It's so smooth that you're high up. It just opulent, nice, high quality American luxury SUV. This is a quality of cars that American luxury companies should strive for. This is like the quality you should aim to be. You know, when you're going to compete with Audi, Mercedes-Benz, Lexus, Acura, all these companies aiming for high quality leather or high quality luxury, you know, the Navigator, you know, it fits that. You know, a bunch of, I always said to myself, like, you know, in previous generations, the Escalade was always the king of the American full-size luxury SUV segment. but the 4th Gen Navigator really stepped it up. You know, they're toe-to-toe with Cadillac with the Escalade, and this is just a damn nice vehicle. The one thing I will say, it is insulated. It's very quiet. It's not as silent as the S-Class was, but it still has a bit of a silent and quiet ambiance of it. But you know, as a truck guy, I'm used to driving a big Ford. This is so nice. It's just luxurious. It's comfortable. It's such a smooth vehicle, and I love driving this thing. It's an awesome car. You know, if you're in the market, you want something large, you have a big family, you need some, you know, you have some cash lying around, you want to treat yourself, the Navigator is a great option to consider. This thing is high first-class luxury in a full-size SUV, and really impressed with how it drives. Really nice. So it is now time for the interview section, which answer 5 generic questions one would ask when going to purchase a vehicle. Question number 1 is, what is my favorite feature about the 2020 Lincoln Navigator? And that is the comfort and driving experience. If you couldn't tell by my expressions in the driving experience portion of the video, this thing is like cutting butter. You're sitting first class, super comfortable seats, just super smooth steering, king of the road, prestigious vibes, driving experience and comfort, the best part of the Lincoln Navigator. Question number 2 of the interview section is, what is my least favorite feature about the Lincoln Navigator? That would be the tech as well as the rear trunk design. As I mentioned in the video, I don't love the tech of the Navigator. It's a little outdated, but and the rear trunk design. I think the Lincoln Navigator is a beautiful looking SUV. You know, really nice, really luxurious. But the back end just a little eh. But aside from that, not bad. Question number 3 of the interview section is, what is the most unique or weird feature of the Lincoln Navigator? And that honestly probably is the gear selector buttons. Kind of weird how it's like little pedals almost. It's little buttons instead of a column shifter or a shifter on the center console. But bit of a weird feature in the Lincoln Navigator. Question number 4 of the interview section is the Lincoln Navigator worth its value? And I would say yes. You're getting a tank of an SUV. You know, really high quality materials from the driver's seat all the way to the third row back, you know, in a different state from you. As I said, you know, the tech's a little iffy, but when you're getting all of these high quality features, these nice materials, big vehicle, and you know, you can use CarPlay to kind of cancel out the iffy tech. So yes, I would say the Lincoln Navigator is worth its value. And question number 5 of the interview section is, would I ever want or own Lincoln Navigator? The answer is yes. The Navigator is, you know, the pinnacle of the full-size luxury SUV segment. Never driven an Escalade, but just really impressed by the Navigator. You know, you feel so prestigious. It's just a nice, luxurious SUV. And I had a really nice time enjoying it. Just really nice. You know, love this to be my daily. So yes, I would want the Lincoln Navigator.
So this is the takeaway point, where I essentially give my final impression and overall opinion of the vehicle I just reviewed. I felt it was a more concise, less opinionated version of my old scoring scale. So without further ado, this is the takeaway point. To put it bluntly, the Navigator is an amazing machine. Lincoln really climbed the ladder to put themselves atop the full-size luxury SUV market. Other generations of the Navigator were nice, but never elicited that head-turning luxury appeal to me, but the 4th Gen Navigator exceeded this. The Navigator is probably my favorite vehicle I've ever driven. Of the 42 cars I've reviewed, I have never walked away from a vehicle wishing I owned it more than the Navigator. That is how incredible the driving experience was. The front seats are tremendously comfortable, possibly the most comfortable vehicle I've ever driven. You're sitting above all the other cars on the road, the interior is great, there's minimal road noise, and you just feel like you've made it when you're behind the wheel of the Navigator. I'll also commend Lincoln for how smooth the Navigator feels. This is a massive SUV, but you don't feel intimidated by its colossal size because of how smoothly it drives. The steering is surprisingly light, and the suspension just absorbs everything, which makes it feel like you're floating in the Navigator. I didn't want to get out of the Navigator, I just wanted to keep driving, and I think that speaks for itself of how tremendous the driving experience was. There aren't many negatives about the Navigator. Yes, the tech is a bit meh for the high price tag of the Navigator, but if you use CarPlay or Android Auto, that basically resolves the problem. If you want to cruise in a spacious, quiet cabin, the Navigator is your car. It can comfortably sit 8 people, has over 100 cubic feet of storage, and can tow over 8,000 pounds. The best way I can put it is I was really impressed by the Navigator, and it was one of my favorites, if not the most favorite car I've ever reviewed. Honestly, just a great car, and I would love to get behind the wheel of a Navigator again someday. Thank you so much for watching my review of the 2020 Lincoln Navigator. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to check out some of my other reviews listed in the catalog shown before you. Feel free to hit the subscribe button also, it is greatly appreciated. Stay tuned for more reviews in store, and again, thanks for watching.